Good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Empowerment Platform, where our goal is to empower you to reach your goals and whatever they may be. We are just here to connect the dots with you and to provide you the resources that you need. So, tonight, I actually wanted to share with you, I kind of titled it Blind Spots. We all have blind spots in our lives, and just like on a car, you know that there's a blind spot there, so you make an adjustment in order to get that visibility that you need. And most often is when we're getting ready to shift lanes or maybe make a turn, you may sit up, or even now manufacturers are making the smaller mirrors that will show you the blind spot. So in our lives, we have blind spots that we may or may not be aware of, and those blind spots can affect us in many different ways. They can affect our marriages, they can affect our work life balance, they can affect our performance, they can just really affect our relationships with different people. And you may be aware of that blind spot or you may not be. So today, I wanted to share with you a tool that will help you and can help you see your blind spots and then work with you to mitigate them or to get rid of them. And when you talk about limitations, blind spots, weaknesses, whatever words that you may have, you may not be able to get rid of something all the way, but you can learn how to make the adjustment. That way you're not stuck performing the same actions and making the same mistakes, so to speak. So feel free to comment with your questions, anything that you might have. I will answer them as we go on. And think of this as more of a teaching workshop type of feel. So I'm going to be going through some things. I'm going to share my screen with you and just take this journey with me. Think about how you react in certain situations. Think about your life. Think about your relationships. And then just figure out, maybe do I have some blind spots, or maybe I need to look further or deeper into this, and then we could just take this journey together. So I'm gonna get started. What I want to share with you is called a DISC, a personality assessment. A lot of people call it a personality assessment. Is really more of an assessment of your behaviors, how you behave in certain situations. And so I'm gonna give you some background history because I don't ever like sharing something with someone when I haven't given them background and they don't understand where it comes from, the validity of it, or why. So let's talk about it a little bit. Hey, 18, how you doing? Thank you for joining me tonight. So the disc comes from, or our iteration of it today, really stems from a doctor named Dr. William Moulton Marston. And back in the 20s, his first real thing, he was a lawyer and a doctor, went to the Harvard Law School. So he was a lawyer and he was a psychologist. So when I say doctor, I mean he was a psychologist. In his early years, he discovered there was a correspondence between blood pressure and lying. So Dr. Marston came up with the very first and early polygraph lie detector test. And he did that in 1917. And the invention was actually constructed in 1915. So he started out with that. Along come, well, in the 20s, he then started to really study human behavior, personality, and the consciousness, colors, emotions, and just how things fit with your behavior. Why does a person behave a certain way? And in 1928, he published a book, Emotions of Normal People. And the disc is really based on his findings from that. He didn't construct the test in that period, but people study his work and then they kind of put together this test. So, what happens in this test is you will answer a series of questions. Some tests are longer than others, and it basically ranks you. You say that this is most like me or this is least like me. And after you take that test, it gives you your results. And what the disc measures, and when we say disc, the D, the I, the S, and the C, the D is, it kind of measures how you respond, how you deal with, how you attack problems. So your disc is dealing with problems, well, the D. The I then of the disc deals with people, emotional connection, how you deal with people. The S is more of how do you pace things? What is your pace with dealing with problems, issues, or different things that come along? And then the C part deals with how do you deal with rules and procedures that are already in place? So we'll go over it again. The DISC, DISC. The D deals with how you deal with problems. The I, how you deal with people or how you interact with people, how you interact with problems. You can say it that way for the D and the I. The S, the pace of this thing. Are you quick to make decisions? Are you a little bit slower? Are you steady? Just your pace. Are you antsy? And then the C, establish rules and protocols. How do you work in those? Now, you may, if you're familiar with it, there are also different terms given to the letters. So people like to, or the D may be associated with dominant, the I, influence, the S, steadiness, the C, conscientiousness. So if you hear those terms, those also correspond to each of the letters. Now, another thing that's measured in this test is we are familiar with our subconscious and conscious. Subconscious is that thing, it's our behaviors that we don't think about, they just happen. Like when you get up in the morning and you brush your teeth, you don't think about what hand to grab the toothbrush with. You normally grab it with your dominant hand. Now, if you think about it and you say, well, tomorrow I'm going to grab it with my non-dominant hand, you're making a conscious thought. So the disc also measures your natural style, which is your subconscious at work, and then your adaptive style. Your adaptive is when you're thinking about what you're doing. You're not just acting. Or you may feel like someone's watching, so you change your behavior a little bit. So those two styles, natural and adaptive, make up who we are. And when we talk about blind spots in our lives, the disc shows us based on our preferences of how we react. It shows us our strengths, but it also can bring and show limitations with those strengths because you may have a person that's very, very dominant in their approach. But what's the limitation of being dominant? It can come off as being aggressive. It could come off as being someone who doesn't listen to other people because they're so wrapped up in making the decisions. But then what do we talk about if we have a very low score in our D? Well, that person may be more calculating. They may not be as decisive. They may come off as indecisive. And there's no right or wrong answer to this. So a lot of times when people look at their scores, they will say, well, if I'm low in this, then I need to increase it because that's something that I don't have and is one better than the other. No, they all make up each individual. Now, while you may want to be conscious about some things and raise them, don't look at it as a right and wrong type of way. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to share my results so we can kind of walk through this together and we'll get an understanding of it. So I took the disc and I'm going to tell you what I saw in it when I was coached on it and when someone went over my results with me, some of the things they pointed out. I'm going to talk about some things that I realized, some things that I decided I want to work on. And as I share my screen here, these are my results. So I'm a 99D, 99I, 11, and I'm looking at the color is your natural. The gray bars are your adaptive. So the natural is your color, gray is the adaptive. When I look at my 99D, 99I, 11S, 67C. Now, anything and what we like to look at is when you score over 50, those start to be kind of like your superpowers. It kind of goes into what you're very good at. And then below that, we start to look at, okay, this is how I deal with other situations, and it may not be my strengths at that point, and there may be somebody else's strengths. So let's tackle this thing. 99D. I am very, very decisive. I can be seen as a go-getter. Like to do a lot of things, make a lot of decisions. Um, what are the limitations of that, though? I could bounce around a lot. I like to start businesses and I like to move on. But a high D like that, where I am, we like big picture. We don't really like to get into mundane details. So I can come off as not being a good listener, because if you give me too much, then I kind of start, I just want the answers. You could say that a D wants results. They're results oriented. So I just want the answer. Can we just move on? But that can be seen as a limitation to someone who says, okay, we need to get these steps in order. And you're skipping steps. And I'm guilty of that. I can say for sure that there have been times where I have made a decision very quickly in my high D, thinking about it, that I didn't think it all the way through. I didn't go through each detail. So there is a limitation there. You could think of other limitations of the high D as just not being tactful. If you could think of a person who is very, very dominant in their approach, they may not speak as kindly as you want them to. And it's not that they're being mean. It's that they just decide, or the way they communicate, they're communicating to someone in a manner that they would like to receive communication, without taking it into effect or into thought that maybe that person doesn't communicate. And this is how this overall, this assessment is worthy, is very valuable, because once you start to understand that different people react differently and have different needs, you will then be able to pick up on those cues and change your approach a little bit. And this is what this is all about. So as we move from the D to the I is very emotional. The I is also very big picture. But what the I likes to do is the center of the crowd. They like to be the person in the party, or the main event, or they're speaking to everybody, they're high-fiving everybody, they're talking to everybody, they're enjoying the crowd, they're feeding from that. So as we look at this, you can think of introverted extroverts as well. D's and I's are extroverts. They love to talk or love to be out there. A D is a little bit more to the point, where the I is a little bit more people person, friendly, enthusiastic, charming, all those things, persuasive. But on the limitation side, an I can seem scattered. They're all over the place. Or an I can take, if they're not the center of the crowd, or if they're not getting that emotional need met, they can become very down with that, because they're not getting their needs met. So if you put an I in a room where the other people aren't I's and they're not as social, then the I can feel a certain type of way. So they have to, I needs to be conscious of that. Could get very emotional. And for me personally, thinking about my I, there are times where things aren't necessarily done to me, or is not meant to be against me, but I still take it personally. So those are things to just think about. Now we move on to the S. I'm a very low S. And when we talked about S, we talked about pace. So S people are usually introverted. They're a little bit more reserved. They need to warm up to you. S's are predictable when you're very high. So just imagine a 99S. That person would be very deliberate, predictable. They are very supportive. Once you have them on your team, it's about the team to them, not them. See, the I and the D, it has to be about the I and the D. but the S is very supportive to the team. They're very stable. So you think of them as your support. They're not going to make decisions as fast as a D or an I. They're going to take their time with it. So when you rush an S, a person that's a very high S, when you rush them, you don't put them in an environment that works for them. You kind of put them in a bad environment. So my S is very low. And what that means is for me, it is hard for me to be patient. It is hard for me to be, I'm supportive, but I'd rather be in charge, if that makes sense. Is you have to be very, very dominant. And I mean, you have to show almost that what you're doing is worthy of me supporting it. And that's just me. It's almost like if your boss, if you wanted to be above your boss, you have to have more than what he has, or you have to have your own business, or else you support him. That's what you do. Um, I can, since I'm fast moving, that's why my S is so low. My pace, I'm just not that slow paced or very, I'm not unstable, so to speak, but I'm not that stable to where I want make or move or change. S's are very slow to adapt to change. You got to kind of, it's got to be worked out and they have to buy into it. Now, as we move to the C, well, limitations of that. So if you have a person that is very, very supportive, they may look at other people's goals and support those goals at the risk of not sharing theirs. And even if they know that something may be off, they may be so in tune with what they're doing, they may not offer that change. And it's very hard to get them to change because they're very stable, very stable. So it's difficult to rush them into something. And they need to warm up to you. So you can't just throw an S into a new group of people and expect them to be like, whoa, I'm just in this. I'm in, it's going to take time. So now let's go to the C. The C talks about how we behave dealing with systems, processes, procedures that are in place. Now, I can tell you for me, I'm a system and processes person. It's something that I've always enjoyed doing. I really like putting them together, and I'm very good with that. Now, you may ask, how does that relate to your D and your I? Well, as long as I'm putting the systems and process in together and I'm putting the processes there, I'm good. I like order and I like for it to be, I like to work smooth. So if something's not smooth, I may go and create that process around it to make it better. But higher C's, maybe like think of a 99C, that is going to be your person that needs every single step before they move. And you are going to have to prove it to them. They're not going to buy into your idea based on your emotion. C's think logically. They need it A, B, C, D, E. And if you say A, B, and F, they're going to be like, okay, what happened to those other letters? And they're going to ask questions. They're going to qualify your statement. So you just can't give them a bunch of, or try to sell them something without explaining it. Think of it this way. If you were selling clothes, a D may come in and they may say, I want these clothes. Do you have them? And if you go down your list of everything you have, you probably will lose that D because they come for a very specific thing. And when you start talking about everything else, they're gone. And then when that I, same thing. Now the I may hang around because I wants to do a lot of talking. So they're with you. S, not so much. They're not going to want to talk. They come get what they want. They may already know exactly what it is, so they don't need it. But the C would appreciate you to give them every detail about it. Hey, this is the style. This is what it's made of. This is how you can wash it. This is how you can dry it. This is how you do it. This is how, or if you're buying an electronic, this is how you work it. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and here's the manual. So when you get those manuals and things you buy, I bet you C's read them. D's and I's, we ain't reading no manual. We just go, hey, let me turn this bad boy on and try to figure it out. C is going to read that manual. Now, what is the limitation, or what can happen? What goes on with the C that can be limiting? Because that sounds good, right? Somebody that's reading the directions, going through the things, making sure it's right before they move. Here's what can happen with a C. A C can get so ingrained in details that when a decision needs to be made, or when a change needs to happen, and they don't have all of the details, they may be reluctant to change. But the change has to happen. And when they are reluctant to change, that can set off the other side, the D's and I's, like, what's wrong with this person? Why we can't get this done? And the C is like, well, I need to make sure everything's right because I just don't trust what you're saying. And then the I gets emotional. Oh, you don't trust me. What's going on? I thought we were a team. And that's how you can see breakups in teams at work and also in marriages. Because when you have people trying to communicate in different languages, D's and I's talk a certain way. S and C's talk a certain way. So if you're opposite in your D's and I's, S's and C's in your relationship, and you're speaking a certain way, and you haven't thought about how the other person is receiving it, then communication, what happens? Breaks down. So knowing these things, knowing the strengths and the limitations of each one can help you in your relationships. And so I'm going to talk about now, especially I'm going to hit the C gap, and I'm going to talk about the gray bars, my adaptives. So I'm pretty much a D all around. It doesn't really change. 99 to 95, I don't really change. Even if I'm a new situation, I'm really probably going to react the same. Now, I can tell you why my I drops, why that goes from 99 to 53. If I'm in a completely new situation, or if there is an I there, and that person's super, super engaged with everybody, I kind of just fall back. I kind of now I'm not as outgoing. I'm not as bubbly, or I'm not as it's not that I'm not enthusiastic or cheerful. It's that I need to feel out the room now. And that person, they're drawing all the energy. I don't really like to compete with energy drawing. So if there's a person that they're drawing all the energy, I kind of just fall back and I just sit in my place. So that's that gap. The S, I'm going to move. I'm going to move around. I'm not going to slow my pace too much. So my S is there, 11 and 10, it stayed. They mirror. Now, my C, 67 to 10. Why the gap? Why is it so huge? It's huge because my D is so high. I am reluctant to follow somebody else's rules and procedures. I normally, when I look at somebody's, I'm thinking that I probably can do it better, or I can do it faster, or I can make it better, or I can improve it. So me sitting in someone else's system is very difficult. It's very difficult for me to follow through on somebody else's procedures. I'm immediately looking at how it can be better. Also, I feel like with the C, I understand the steps, because when I do procedures, I outline them and I go all the way down, but I might not explain it as well either. I may be able to do it, but I'm not going to explain it to you like that. I'm going to expect that you get it. So I think my C it depends on where my D is, how the day is going, whether or not that C really stays up there. But I do know for a fact that when it's somebody else's process and I'm getting put in there, I'm always looking at, okay, how can this be better? How can it be different? Is there something going on there? And then even the little things I pick at, like, man, they say that especially if a person says they have a good system in place, and they say, Yeah, we got a good system going on here. It works well. This is how it works for people. And I get in that system and then I find a hole and I'm like, oh, wow. So you told me it was X, Y, and Z, but you missed a step. Now I feel like the whole thing's breaking apart and I really don't want to be in your system, or I really don't want to follow all of your rules. Now it kind of just breaks it for me. So as we look at these and you see them, I kind of broken down how I react, my natural and my adaptive style. There are ways. So when we coach on the disc and when I have a client or I have somebody that they take an assessment, we kind of just go through the same process. I go through this with them and I ask them, I say, well, how do you feel about what I stated about these different letters? How do they fit you? And for me personally, my clients that I have coached, it's pretty spot on with how they were or how they behave or how they act. And they say, yes, that's me. I just never knew why, or I never knew this, or now this makes sense. So really, when you take the disc and you get coaching about it, you got to have that why. Why are you taking it? What are you seeking? What's missing for you? What would you like to gain? So when I took it, I wanted to know, and I have taken one before. This is a newer one that I took this year, but I took my first one maybe 6 years ago, I think. And at that time, I took it because I had became a licensed realtor, and my team lead at the time, or my sponsor, he said that everybody that he works with, he wants them to take a disc so he can know. And at that time, it didn't register with me, but now it makes sense. Whenever you're working with people and you're team building, and even if you're getting married or you're dating, your relationships, you make new friends, think about these things. Now, with friendships, you can't be like, hey, you want to be my friend? Take a disc. But relationships, something serious, I would be like, hey, I think you should take this assessment. It's almost like marriage counseling. If you're going to get married, I recommend you get counseling first, because oftentimes people get married and they don't know how to really solve problems. They don't really know how to communicate effectively. And I'm not talking about something's wrong. I'm talking about bringing awareness. And this is what this does. This brings awareness to you. And sorry, I see your question. I will drop you a line on how to take the assessment and everything like that. And actually, for everybody that's on here, there is normally a charge, but anyone who comes through this live now and they want an assessment, I will do an assessment and a 30-minute consultation at no charge. So I got your comment, and I will remember that, and I'll link up with you. I'll probably drop you a message, and I'll put my information in there as well. So as we move forward, now you start to think about not only what are my strengths and limitations, why do I act that way? Now I have more awareness. How can I change it? Because it gets deeper than this. It gets way, way deeper. We could talk about different things like the maturity levels. If you're a D, you're a D. But you can be a mature D or immature D. And a quick example of that is a mature D, even though they are very decisive, they make decisions and they do this and they do that very quickly. In their maturity level, they may say, hey, let me slow down. Let me think it through a little bit. And this is a strength they have gained through maturity. Now, immature D, they may not slow down for anybody. Or even if somebody tells them, hey, you lack tact, you're not very tactful in your approach. They're like, oh man, that's just how I am, blah, blah, blah. But as you reach maturity levels in this thing, you start to change a little bit. Not that you change who you are, but you change your reactions, the way you act, the way you respond. You think a little bit more. I'm going to share a couple of other things with you just to talk about language and how this works how this can work for you. How can this help you? Some communication tips. So I'm going to bring up some things, a couple of insights. So when we talk about a S, let's go to the S. If I explained to you earlier that S's, they they like to work with people, they like to be a team, they like a slower pace, they're concerned with stability, they think logically just like the C. They want to be involved personally, but they're not the one that has to be the front person. So what do you think? They're patient. So we know these characteristics. What should we do with that? So if a person is concerned with being stable and you have a new idea, what should you do? You make sure that your idea is communicated to them clearly and then it minimizes the risk so that it's not risky to them. If they like personal involvement, but they don't want to be in the front, you bring them into the team, you work with them, you show that you're interested, but you don't make them the front man. S likes for people to notice that they're patient and that they persevere. So then I'll compliment you on that. If a S is calm and they're peaceful and they're steady, then the environment I want to put a S in, it should be relaxing and friendly. I shouldn't put an S in a high-powered environment where we're making a lot of decisions and it's fast-paced and we're talking fast and we're moving fast. That's not an environment conducive to them. It's not going to help them. It's going to make them antsy and it's going to stress them out. If a S is looking for calmness and peace, well, I said that. But if they enjoy teamwork, just put them in a group. Don't leave them alone. They may want sincere feedback and to know that they're appreciated. So then you just acknowledge them. And take this for your relationships, for your marriages. If you know that your spouse wants sincere feedback, then you give them that feedback and you be honest about it. And even if it's not you, it's not me, this is not what I do, this is where your maturity level comes out. Even though I know it's not my language. And there's a book out there called The Love Languages. So the Love Languages talks about speaking your partner's language. It's just not about learning your own, but it's talking about speaking your partner's love language. So if you know that they like acts of service, you serve them. If they like gifts, you get them gifts. And then they do the same for you. So you got to look at the disc once you have taken it, once you start to, and you can really do this if you just look at your results and you study yourself. You can start to pick up on other people's primary strengths and their limitations. And instead of being upset with them, or instead of pushing them off or whatever the case, you can then start to question and wonder and think about what I can do differently to help this situation. So if I got a C, and a C thinks logically, remember? They're not emotional, they're logical. A high C thinks logically. So show them the reasoning. Hey, we need to do this different, and here is why. C's need to know the process. So let me explain the process to you. And my wife and I'm a high D, I'm a high I, D and I, she's a high S and C. We often have that friction sometimes where if we're doing something together, if we're working on business together, or we're looking at a proposal or something like that, I will go through quickly. And she is like, wait a minute, I need to understand it. And at times I'm like, man, what do you got to understand? We getting through this thing. We reading this thing. We going through it. And it's like, wait a minute. I need to see everything so I can have a clear understanding. So now I have to dial back and remember that, okay, it's the D affected. I got to slow it down so we can work together. Now, in times where she may not be as decisive as I am, then I can pull her and say, hey, we got enough information. Let's go ahead and do this. And that's how you complement one another. Now, when we think about C's again, they're very cautious. So don't rush a C to make a decision. Allow them to think. Ask them before you do something. Give them time. C's are very accurate, and they want you to know that. So if I have a high C on my team, I may say, hey, that's great, great work. I appreciate your thoroughness on that. C's are very quality control people. So let them know, let them see, let them go through the checks. They're balancing it out. Oftentimes, when D's are running around everywhere doing stuff, things fall in the gap. The C's are, and the S's are the people who catching those things that's falling and making sure they're being done properly. A C would like to contemplate before they just make a decision. So tell them why. Tell them how. Help them through it so it can get done. I'm going to move on to the I for communication, just so we can get a whole picture of everybody. So an I, they think emotionally, very emotional. So you support their feelings when you can. Now, I'm not talking about if they're irrational with it. But if you know they're emotionally, they're thinking emotionally, they react to that, give them that, support them. Eyes like to be around more eyes, so enthusiastic people. So if you know that you're if you know that you're a high C and you got a high I for a boss, or you're a high C and you got a high I for a spouse, and they're always cheerful and bubbly, and you like, man, why? But still try to be optimistic, be a little bit more upbeat, scratch their ego. So that will put them in an environment that they enjoy. We know that D's and I's, and we're talking specifically about the I, but they want to know the general expectations, the big picture. So that means avoid involved details. Don't give them everything each step of the way, because if you do that, the I is going to dream on you. They're going to go, whoa, look at that bird flying while you're still talking. And then that's the limitation that the I is being looked at, that they're not paying attention and they're selective hearers, listeners. So think about it. Eyes, since they seem disorganized, since they seem all over the place, do it with them, help them. Eyes like to be stimulated. So keep up a good pace with them. Eyes like to know that you recognize that they look good. So talk about their accomplishments, their progress. Be appreciative. Show that appreciation to them. Connect with them emotionally. And that way, when you do that, you're not only putting them in an environment that they can thrive in, you also feel good as well. Because these shouldn't be a thing to where if I got to help you in your situation, then mine decreases and I feel bad. No, you should feel good. It should feel good when you speak your spouse's love language to them and it makes them happy. You should get enjoyment from that. Let's go over some things for the D's. And don't take this as this is how you have to be if you are this. These are things that are tendencies. As we all know, everybody's an individual. Not everything's going to fit to the T, but it's close. And most people think it's very close. So let's talk about a D. A lot of D's want to be the winner. They want to be number one. They want to be on top. They want to be the big dog. They want to be the boss. So show them how to win. If you know that D's want facts and highlights, give them a bullet point or bullet list of, hey, this is what we did for the results. Boom, boom, boom. Concise data, not this is everything we did. And if you know CEOs, They don't read your packet of information. They look at the memo on the front that shows them the highlights. And then they pass it to the C on the team that's going to read all the rest of that stuff. So when you know that you have a high D or a person that's very active, they want the facts, they want the highlights, you just give them that. And you keep the packet, you bundle it all together, and it's there if they ever want to glance through and look. But if not, boom, there it is. They have what they needed. These strive for results. So, how can we, what kind of goal do we have? What kind of boundaries? Where are you at? Go big or go home. Do it or get out of the way. Support or get out of the way. And when I say get out of the way, it's you know that they want the result. If you're not going to be on that same approach to get the results, support them or let them go ahead and do what they need to do to get it. These like their personal choices. They're like, I'm the man, I'm in control. So allow them to do their thing. Of course, we got to have limits. It's got to be balanced. And a mature D, a D that's thought about this thing and they're studying themselves and they're improving, they're going to know how to act in the limits. Immature D need some coaching. They need some help. They got to get there. They're just not there yet. D's prefer to delegate. They may not do everything. And for me, I like to delegate certain things because I know that other people can do them better. And I want to go ahead and do the next thing. Need to be in charge. Let them take the lead. Some D's like conflict. But when you do argue with a D, give them the facts. Don't really be on the personal or the emotional side of it. And it's not that they want conflict. It's just that they're so dominant in their approach. It's going to rub people the wrong way. Now, as we start to wrap up and wind down, man, that hour went fast. I've given you and showed you my results. We went down the explanation of how these things can work, not only in relationships, but also at work or just any other situation where you can be more aware of how, why people react or think or do or say the things they do. So you say, what's next? What's next is you take this assessment, you get a 30-minute consult with me, especially if you're listening. We just go over the same thing I went over here. You get a little bit of awareness and about who you are. But think about your why. Why do I want to take it? What do I think about? How can this help me? What are you looking to gain? Maybe think about something that may be missing. You feel like I had a client who mentioned that, I want to start this thing. I want to do this, but it seems like I just can't never take that next step. That person was a high S. D was low. So the decision making, that D, that go ahead and let me make that step, is not there for them. So what we do is after you gain that awareness, we move on to the next phase. How do we now start to strengthen those things? How do we start to strengthen, and not strengthen, but how do we reduce the limitations? How do we, now that we're aware of this, how can coaching help me? How can I be coached and get better in my life in this particular area or that particular area? And I have that. I have the monthly coaching that I do. And also I have a coaching plan that's over a 3-month period, 3, 6, 12 months. But we start at 3 just to go over and to get you in tune with the system, because it takes time to change things. This isn't something that you take, you gain information, and then tomorrow you're a brand new person and you've hit all the checkpoints and you're good. This is something that takes a little time. It's like building a new habit. And they say that you really never get rid of your bad habits. You just understand them and then you replace them. And you, when they come up or creep up, you have that new habit in place so you don't fall back. So that's kind of where we are. That's where we go with this. And this is how it's done. And this can help you. There are people that use the disc and they help you in your relationships, your marriages. I am more of a leadership coach, leadership development. So team building, that is what I do with the disc. I help people, I help teams understand their strengths, their limitations, how they can work well together. I did a team workshop Friday. Was it Friday? Thursday. And it was a group of guys. They work together. They're on a team. And they were just, trying to figure out, okay, how can we communicate better? How can we work better as a team? And what we saw was their scores were different. So they had complementing scores, but they didn't have the right person doing the right job. So what we learned was, okay, we discussed it. We said, okay, well, these two people, since they're high C's, they should be doing that research, pulling it together. And then the D on the team, okay, now he makes the decision based on the research that they have. Because what was happening was the D was kind of trying to make a decision, but he hadn't provided that information to the C's. And they were like, well, how do you expect us to make a decision when you haven't given us anything? And then the I, of course, he was just like, yeah, I'm not with all the details. I do it if I have to, but I prefer not. So that's how it can work with your team. As business owners, you got to think about, even if you're a solo entrepreneur, even if it's just you and you don't have a team, you got to think about your customers, your clients. How, when you sell or market a product, how can you make sure that product speaks to each letter, the D, the I, the S, and the C? If I give too little information, I might lose the S's and the C's. Sales are down. If I give too much information, I might lose the D's and the I's. Sales are down or lost. How can I give enough information and the correct information, or run different marketing in order to reach each one of them? Because even in this live that I presented to you, I've tried to do enough talking to keep my eyes engaged, showed the results so the D's are engaged, put up the PowerPoint, well, not a PowerPoint, but the PDF of my score so the S's and the C's can see it. I went and then I read information about Dr. William so I could show a little bit of that validity. So it's not like I'm trying to just tell you something and you don't have any background information. That helps the C's and the S's to feel more comfortable, that I'm not just telling something without any background. So as we go through life and we get more in tune, we try to figure out, okay, now that I have taken this and I know this, what are my blind spots? Oh yeah, since I'm a high I, blind spot that I never really thought about, but now I think about it more, is I can be all over the place. I do need to, or I should get a little help with organization. If you're a high C and you're working and you're good, you might say, oh yeah, I can get bogged down in the details. Why won't the boss ever go with my idea? Well, you talk to him for an hour, and after 10 minutes, boss mind was gone. He was somewhere else trying to figure out how he's going to make the next whatever. So next time you have an idea, you shoot him a memo with some bullet points on how this can bring results. because now, oh, we can just go so much deeper into this. Now we start using keywords based on how we know the other person behaves. So if I know a D is results oriented, I may say things like, hey, here are those results you're looking for. Or if I know it's an I might be like, wow, there's just so much life in this event. You want to come to the next one? You got to use those key terms and words that kind of pique their interest. I can't go and say to a C, I went to this event and man, it was just very high powered and the emotions were running high and it was just felt so good. A C is going to be like, and why should I go? Give me some reasons, some details. So, and I got that from a video I watched where a guy was just talking about that. So these things, what I'm telling you, they're not just groundbreaking that I came up with. This is proven research. And you can learn how to be a better spouse, be a better person, be a better friend, be a better team leader, be a better teammate, be a better coworker, be a better parent. Because when you have your kids, and I would recommend they middle school and above take it, because the words that are when you take the assessment and you read the words and you're talking about is it like me or not like me, you need to understand the terminology that they're using. So not an elementary kid, unless they're super high on the reading, I wouldn't recommend it. But when you know what type of personality or behaviors your kids exhibit, then you know how to reach them. So in parenting, if I know that my son is a high S, if he's very slow paced, steady, I don't want to put him in situations where, hey, I need you to make this decision right now. Or let's move, go, 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 go. It's going to put him in just a stressful situation. So I won't want to do that. You wouldn't want to talk to your kids in a language that they don't speak. If I went to just Mexico and I talked to somebody and all they speak is Spanish and all I speak is English, and this person never had any contact with the English language, and I'm talking and they don't understand, why would I get frustrated? So if I'm a high D and my son is not a high D and I talk to him in D language and he gets, flustered, frustrated, whatever, why am I mad about that? That I know, now that I know, okay. And you can start to see it even before, like I said, everybody's not going to take the assessment. So you're not going to have everybody's chart walking around saying, hey, is this person? Here's what they are. But you can start to see how they behave, where they lean towards. And you will remember, you'll say, yeah, I remember that when I took the assessment and I studied a little bit more for myself, those were the behaviors of the other letters or characteristics of the other letters. So now, yeah, I do understand why so-and-so wants more detail. It's just what they need. So let me give them a little bit more detail without getting frustrated. And that's where it is. So what I'm going to do is, I hope everybody stayed on that wanted an assessment, because I'm going to do it for free. Going to do your assessment, going to give you a 30-minute consultation for free. What I need you to do is, you can go to my page on Facebook, which is, this is at the empowerment platform. So you can put it there, or you can put it in. If you just do my name at Tyrus Shivers, it will bring up my leadership page. You can do it there. If you can't find either one of those pages, just look up me on Facebook and send me a direct message, or you can email me. Put it in there now so you can see it. Send me an email. Just let me know that you were on the live that I did, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, or wherever. When you do that, I will send you the link to take the assessment. And I'll also put information in on how you can get on my schedule, my calendar. I have a calendar. So you just go in there and schedule the 30-minute consultation after, because it says use this after you've taken the assessment. So it's very clear. You just go in and set that up with me. And once you take the assessment, you will get your results immediately. And then I will get a copy of them. You schedule a time with me. We spend 30 minutes together. We go through what I went through on this and a little bit more, because I have some other things that I didn't share here that I do share in my consultations. And after that, I'll send you a follow-up email about things we discussed. And if you want coaching, or if you want to go further, or if you want more insight, I have some things that we can work around and do that as well. Thanks, Fatai. I appreciate it. I see that I was joined by a lot of other certified extreme execution coaches. I appreciate the support, family. So, anybody got any questions? I got 4 good minutes with you, because I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Emmanuel, if you still on, you got my information, sir. I will definitely hit you up. Scrolling through. That's my mother, y'all. Wanda Grace. She's taking the assessment. We had her consultation. And like I said, it's great for everyone who is willing to take it, because you just get a learning. Oh, and this report, if you can see on my screen, it's 22 pages. So we only looked at the first page. There's just so much more information about the report, the styles. We spend that time. I didn't even go through the words that can be. See, that's kind of what I talked about at the beginning, the different words that can be associated with the letters, how they act, how they react, how they behave in those situations. And these are some terms that correspond. And we'll get into that. So there's a lot to get into with this. It goes a lot deeper. And we will definitely cover those things. TK, I see you. I got you. You know I got you. Well, I appreciate it, family. As always, I appreciate you taking the time to spend with me, to listen to me for an hour, to cover things. And I do this to empower you, to help you, to reach your goals. And I think this is a very, very phenomenal tool that can help you reach and empower you to reach your goals, because it can show you your blind spots. It can show you limitations, but it also shows you your strengths. So where you can be celebrated. And it helps. It really does. I put down, and I don't do it every day. So anytime I share anything with you guys, know that I'm not perfect. And I don't do everything, but I try to get through this every day. I try to read my assessment every day. And then I look at my wife's often. I look at my sons, and I look at other people's, and I research and I read just so I can get a little bit better, because this empowers me. It helped me see, okay, this is why I'm doing this. And it's not an excuse, but it makes sense. So now that I understand it, I'm aware of it. I can be authentic with it. I can really say I want to change, or I want to grow in this area. And then I set up those action plans, those steps to make that change. And with the group I'm in, with my coach, there's accountability. So if I say, hey, this is this, I'm held accountable to a standard. And then I made that change based on what I set up with my coach because I received coaching. I have more than one coach, and I received that coaching as well. And this is not something that I'm telling you, oh, you should get coaching because I want to coach you. No, I received that because I think that coaching in every aspect of your life, I even break it down to that. I think there is a coach out there for every aspect of your life. You know, if I wanted to be in the NBA, I would go find a great basketball coach. But I wouldn't necessarily, even if he had great information, I wouldn't necessarily ask my basketball coach for relationship advice. I want to go to a relationship coach. I may have an awesome business coach, but if I want to learn real estate investing, I might go to a real estate investing coach. Somebody who's doing what they say they're doing, and you can see that they're living it. So I believe in coaching for every aspect of your life. I appreciate it, family. You take care, you be safe. As always, in these times, it's very different for all of us. My prayers are with everyone and their families that they'll be safe, that we will get through COVID-19. It's just, it's a season of life like everything else. It has happened before in the past. It will happen again in the future. So we just believe that the Most High will protect us and that we know and trust in His will. It will be done and it's perfect. So I thank you. Have a great night. I'll see you guys next week. I plan on bringing a guest next week with me, and what I want to cover, I keep it a secret, but it's something that you can do in your house during this time, and I think it's much needed. I need it. I haven't been doing it. I think I'm going to sign up myself and get this in-home consultation done. And I want to bring somebody on that can speak to it a little bit more. I'm not going to tell you, give you a little bit of let you have a little bit of excitement thinking about it, but I think it'll be very good if I can line them up. So I appreciate you. Have a great night. And as always, I'm Tyra Shivers with the Empowerment Platform. The sole purpose is to empower you to reach your goals, whatever they may be, and connect you with the resources to make those dreams come alive. Thanks.